Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Assam History through Academy of Civil Services in Dibrugarh. So today in our class we will be learning about three very important topics that we said we will discuss in today's class. Okay, so the three topics for today's class will be the Koch Kingdom, about the kings, about the literature and whatever architecture that they did during their rule, okay, in Western Assam, okay, and then we will talk about the great, the Moamoria Rebellion, which had made a very significant change in the political, economic, cultural, as well as societal history of Assam. It's a very interesting and a very big topic that will help you not only prepare for your prelims, but also for your mains examination, okay? And then, after studying the Moamoria Rebellion, we will talk about the Burmese invasions. So there were three Burmese invasions. In Assamese we call it Manor Akraman, okay? So that is also very important because just after the Burmese invasions, the Britishers with their own colonial aspirations had made their mark and established their power in the northeastern part of India. Okay, so this is the reason why we have to learn about all the three things in today's class, and special importance to the Moamoria Rebellion and a bit of the important things about the Burmese invasion as well. Okay, so just to give a bit of a recap about what we studied in the last class, so let's talk about we studied about the different battles. We studied about Battle of Horaighat. We studied about Battle of Alaboi, which we really lost in a very bad way, and then we finally recovered in the Battle of Itakuli in 1682 under the reign of Godador Singha. Okay, so that was we said about how the whole 17th century was used to re-establish and spread the political frontiers and political powers of the Ahom Kingdom. And then we also made a very interesting point about how in the 18th century, after the establishment of the political power, after that, the whole Ahom kings, starting from Rudra Singha to Shiva Singha, okay, all these Ahom kings started experimenting a lot on the cultural side of their kingdom. Okay, so they started building roads, they started building palaces, captured new capitals, shifted their capitals, built a Ronghar. There were many temples which were constructed in following the Shakta form of worship. Okay, so 17th century political expansions, defensive political mechanisms and strategies, and 18th century about the cultural exploration, the cultural architectural side of Ahom kings. Okay, so this is how you have to distinguish and divide or compartmentalize between the two centuries, which was very important in medieval Assamese history. Okay, so now that we've talked about what we taught in the last class, so let's start with some information about the Koch kings. So before that, let me clarify. So in the last class, we studied till Shiva Singha. Okay, so after Shiva Singha, we will talk about a few more Ahom rulers before eventually talking about the causes of the Moamoria Rebellion, just after the topic of the Koch kings. Okay, so what is the most important thing about the Koch Kingdom vis-a-vis the Ahom Kingdom? Why do we really study the Koch Kingdom? So as you all know probably, that one of the greatest saints of India, and probably the greatest one in Assam, Srimanta Shonkordev, he was actually under the patronage of one of the most valiant Koch kings, and his name was Nara Narayan. Okay, so let's start off with the first topic of today's class, the Koch kings. Okay, so they were mostly they were situated in the western part of Assam, towards the west of the Ahom Kingdom. Okay, so before we delve into the formal Koch kings and their legacy, let's start off with some where we ended on the end of the first class, about the end of the ancient Kamrupa kingdom. So as we said, that because of so many reasons like coming of feudalism and loss of trade, there were so many reasons why the ancient Assamese Kamrupa kingdom came to an end with the fall of the last of the Palas, because they were also defeated by the Western Palas. not only that, there were a few invasions from the west. Turkish generals like Bakhtiyar Khilji, then Ghiyasuddin Iyas Khilji, and then Uzbek Tugril Khan. All these people from the west, they were invading, and on the other hand, Sukafa had already come from the eastern side. So by the time it was the end of the beginning or mid of the 13th century, so there were two forces which were acting on Assam at that point of time. One was the Western Turkish Afghan general invasion started by Bakhtiyar Khilji, and the other one was the more agricultural sort of exploration by the Shan tribes, the Sukafa, the first king of the Ahoms, okay, from the eastern side of Assam. So these two forces are trying to gain their hold in the mainland, in the land of Assam, and so that really marks the end of the ancient Kamrupa kingdom, and it starts the beginning of another important kingdom, and that is known as the Kamata kingdom. Okay, Kamata. Okay, so Kamata kingdom is what started after the fall of the Palas. So what is the speciality about the Kamata kingdom? So it was slightly towards the west of the ancient Kamrupa kingdom. So if you imagine that the ancient Kamrupa kingdom was established somewhere around Guwahati or somewhere around the Kamakya temple, then the Kamata kingdom actually was even to the west of that. Okay, for example, somewhere near the, let's say, the Karotoya river, or somewhere near present Koch Bihar. Okay, so Koch Bihar that we have presently, so that actually derives its name from Koch Bihar, and aka from the Koch kings. Okay, so that is how you make a formation in your mind that this Kamata kingdom is actually even to the west of the Kamrupa kingdom. Okay, not only just the Ahom kingdom, but even to the west of the Kamrupa kingdom. Okay, so let's talk about one of the most important rulers of the Kamata kingdom. So his name was Durlabh Narayan. So one of the very special characteristics of the rulers of the Kamata kingdom you will find is that they have Narayan as their part of their names, like surname, you can say that, which is very interesting because even Nara Narayan took the same name. Okay, so he was also a Koch kingdom, ruler of the Koch kingdom, and even now a lot of Koch people in Assam have Nara Narayan as their surnames. Okay, so whenever you're trying to read the names and the surnames, if you want to understand the present relevance or how it is connected, or just to find it more interesting, you need to see how these surnames were actually even related to ancient or even medieval times. Okay, if I leave that for now. So Durlabh Narayan was one of the most popular kings of the Kamata kingdom, and he ruled from around 1330 to 1350 AD. Okay, that was after Sukafa definitely, but definitely before Suhumung Dhingyaraja. Okay, so you place him somewhere in that part. And why do we actually talk about Durlabh Narayan? Because, okay, so this is very important. We will now talk about the literature which was prevalent during his kingship. Okay, so how do we approach it? Of course, we can. I can write down the name of the poets who were there in the court and talk about their own authorship. Okay, so let's just start with that. For example, there was one poet, one writer in his kingdom. His name was Hem Saraswati. Okay, so you got to remember these things because these are very favorite topics of APSC. So Hem Saraswati. Sorry, I just made a mistake here. So Hem Saraswati or Hem Saraswati, he wrote the Prahlada Charita. Okay, so Prahlada Charita was written by Hem Saraswati. Okay, then there was another fellow, his name was Kavi Ratna Saraswati. Kavi Ratna, S means Saraswati, out of Kavi Ratna Saraswati, or he was also known as Ram Saraswati. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out, to be sure about it. Okay, so Ram, he's also known as Ram Saraswati. S is like the short form of Saraswati. don't want to waste the space on this board. So what did he write? He wrote another piece of literature. It's known as Jaya Dhrata Badha. Okay, so there are three parts in this whole name, Jaya Dhrata Badha. So who wrote Jaya Dhrata Badha? It was Ram Saraswati, or aka Kaviratna Saraswati. Okay, so these are the two most important literary giants in the court of the Kamata ruler Durlab Narayan, and so we probably will remember this as a fact. But the very interesting thing that I want to mention here right now is that these two pieces of literature actually mark the formal beginning of the vernacular Assamese language in India. Okay, let me repeat it once again. So the way, the form of Assamese that we read today whenever we read the newspaper like Amar Ahom or Janamumir, the written form of Assamese that we have right now, so we can actually see the faint glimpse of the emergence of the language, the written language of Assamese in these texts. Okay, so and what is the why do we talk about these as the first few ones? Well, because since we have talked about this, well, if you remember in the ancient period when we were talking about pieces of inscriptions, okay, epigraphy as a source of history. So if you remember, most of them were actually written in chaste Sanskrit. Okay, it was taken from the Gupta script, so it was written in chaste Sanskrit. For example, a Nidhanpur copper plate inscription under the reign of Bhaskar Brahman was actually written in Sanskrit. But now in Prahlada Charita and Jayadratha Bada, we find the earliest traces of the vernacular language of Assamese. That's one point. If we want to connect it to the rest of the history of India and the emergence of local languages, you will find out that, let's just recap. Okay, so Sanskrit was the language of the elites in almost all parts of the kingdoms in ancient India. Epigraphs, then schools, including different schools like Nalanda and everywhere. So Sanskrit was used as a form of expression in most elite societies in ancient India as well as medieval India. Pali was used by the Buddhists. Prakrit was also used by Ashoka as well. There were different scripts, of course, but the point I'm trying to make is that these are all very classical languages, okay? And there was a point of time in the transformation from ancient to medieval history of India that a lot of these ancient classical languages sort of merged with a lot of local dialects and became what we now have as different state languages like Marathi, Bihari, Maithili, or Assamese for that matter. So what I'm trying to say is that so there was classical Sanskrit on one hand, Pali, Prakrit, all the classical languages on one hand used by the elites, and then we had on the other hand what we call the language of the popular masses. For example, it is known as Apabhramsa. Okay, I will write down the name out here so that you can probably look it down on Google. Apabhramsa. Apabhramsa. Okay, so what is Apabhramsa? So it is a very crude form of language. So it will be used by the common people, not the elites. It is used to spread a lot of the culture of the middle class, the common people. Okay, so if you have to think about it, so what I'm trying to say is that so the classical languages and the Apabhramsa form of languages sort of merged together, and on top of that, because by that time, what I mean is that by the time the ancient period was ending, by the time the end of the Gupta Empire, for example, and the beginning of the rest of the different regional empires, you will figure out that the amount of trade, the international as well as domestic trade that we had at a point of time was slowly reducing, and eventually it drastically reduced. So as trade reduced, so there was less intermingling of people between different parts of India. Okay, so mark my statement once again, as trade reduced both domestically and internationally with the fall of the Gupta Empire, with the beginning of the land grants, and with the end of the ancient period, the intermingling of people from different parts of India reduced by a significant amount. Now, if the intermingling will reduce, if the whole of India will be separated into different spots, different corners, different centers of power, which is what we call as feudalism, which is the mark of medieval history in any part of the world. So the whole separation, the whole small different centers of power that we had in India at a point of time, and there was no intermingling. This is the reason why people started developing their own languages. So what I'm trying to say is that because all the centers of power were separated in the medieval age, people had no other option but to find out their own form of communication. And because there was no intermingling, there was no common overarching language like Sanskrit for that matter. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is that whole trend of emergence of local regional languages like Maithili or Bihari or Marathi or even Assamese for that matter started from the beginning of the Upper Bramsa being merging with the Sanskrit language. Okay, so and if you want to give an example of the earliest form of vernacular Assamese, you will find it in Ahom Saraswati work, for example, and that was during the time of Nara Narayan. So that is the most important part of his reign. Okay, so since we're done with this, let's start with the next important king. Okay, so now before we start with the beginning of the Koch Kingdom, let's just talk a paragraph about the Chutia Kingdom that we talked about in Suhumung's time, 1523. Chutia Kingdom was defeated wholeheartedly, totally annexed by the Ahoms under Suhumung Dihingya Raja, and the whole post of Khodia Khwabuhai was created to sort of institutionalize the rule of the Khodia part. Okay, so that we already talked about. So now the only thing I want to talk about is that the Chutia Kingdom, it was the founder of Chutia Kingdom was a person known as Birpal. Okay, Birpal. He was the founder of the Chutia Kingdom. It was on the north bank of Brahmaputra. The capital was known as Swadhyapuri or Khodia. Okay, Swadhyapuri or Khodia. And the greatest of the Chutia kings was another person. He was known as Ratna Dhwaj Pala. Okay, Ratna Dhwaj Pal. Okay, so this is Birpal was the founder. F means founder and of the Chutia kingdom, and the Ratna Dhwaj Pal was their greatest ruler. Okay, so and the capital was in Swadhyapuri, and their whole kingdom was in the northern bank of the Brahmaputra towards the eastern part of Assam. Okay, so that's almost all the things that you need to learn about the Chutia kingdom, and we'll talk about the relations with the Ahom kingdom later on. So now let's go on to the Koch kingdom, which is very important, as I've already mentioned. Nara Narayan and yes, another very interesting fellow, the brother of Nara Narayan, his name was Silarai. Okay, Silarai in Assamese. So let's talk about the Koch kingdom. So what really happened is that so it's very hard to find out the beginning of any kingdom because the start of any kingdom cannot be precisely detected or diagnosed, okay, or located, a better word will be located. The start of any particular kingdom cannot be located because there needs to be some battles, there needs to be grabbing of power by one of the generals. Okay, so that is how you start a kingdom. So, and mostly we keep track of the most important rulers of a particular kingdom, but in the case of the Koch kingdom, they had one person known as Hariya Mandal. Okay, Hariya Mandal. He was probably a very strong fellow, gathering a few other followers. He was probably physically and mentally very strong, and he was also intelligent, and he had some sort of popularity amongst the people, and he was looked up to by the young generation. So he gathered a few followers of him, and then he started expanding his kingdom. Okay, so Haryamandal was he is said to be the progenitor, the beginner, the founder of the Koch kingdom. Okay, so you can use the word founder or progenitor. So basically the male line will start from Haryamandal. but he was not the ruler who successfully established the Koch Kingdom. So there was another fellow here which came after Haryamandal. His name is Biswa Singha. Okay, so Biswa Singha was the person who established and sort of increased the power of the Koch people, and he defeated a lot of Barabhuyas, he defeated a lot of other small tribal rulers, small states which were there at the point of time, and he eventually gathered economic, political and social clout, power, and then eventually he established the Koch Kingdom. So this is the distinction. If they ask who is the founder or the beginner, it will be Haryamandal, but if they ask who established it, so that will definitely be Biswa Singha. Okay, so this is about the beginning of the Koch Kingdom. And remember one thing, Biswa Singha was the contemporary of Suhummu. Okay, so he was contemporary of Suhummu. So remember, like the end of 15th century. Okay, so this was when Suhummu was there. So that's Biswa Singha for you. But after we are done with this, let's talk about how the Koches have been referred to in the sources of history. Especially they, so whenever they rule a particular region, any particular line of kings will try to trace their lineage from one of the most, they will try to trace their lineage from very important sources. For example, the earlier Burmana line of kings, they said that, okay, we are descending from the Naraka line of kings. And in the case of Koches, they were actually referred to as Kuvachas, okay, in the Vedas. So they have been referred to as Kuvachas in the Vedas, so which shows their sort of line, and that they were even present during the Vedic age. Okay, so that's just that's not a very concrete source of history, but it's just for making you remember that they were also known as Kuvachas in the Vedas. During the time of the Koch Kingdom, especially during Biswa Singha's time, there was a visitor from UK. His name was Ralph Fitch. Okay, so Ralph Fitch was the visitor during the time of the Koch Kingdoms. Okay, so probably during the time of Nara Narayan as well. So he came to West Asia, he came to Central Asia, then he came to Southeast Asia as well, also visited India. So just remember that during the time of the Koch rulers, there was one traveler from UK, a merchant who had come all the way to the Koch Kingdom in Assam, and his name was Ralph Fitch. Okay, so that's Ralph Fitch for you. He was a traveler, and history is all about remembering the different travelers which came in different times, starting from Marco Polo or Ralph Fitch or Tavernier or Bernier or all those people. Okay, so this is about the beginning of the Koch Kingdom. Now let's finally delve into what was done during the reign of the greatest king of the Koches, and his name was none other than Nara Narayan. Okay, Nara Narayan. Okay, I'm writing it in this way, but Nara Narayan. Okay, Nara Narayan. So he was the greatest of the Koch kings. Okay, let's try to understand what was his role as a part of the Koch Kingdom, as a ruler of the Koch Kingdom. His brother was Shilarai. Okay, so Shila is actually a kite, Siloni. Okay, so this is because he was very fast. Okay, he was lightning fast in his tactical maneuvers, in his skills in fighting. Okay, so this is very important, Silarai. So what was the most important thing about their rules? So Nara Narayan, he sponsored his brother known as Guhai Kamal to construct the Guhai Kamal Ali. Okay, Guhai Kamal Ali. Okay, now some of you will be wondering where is this particular road? This particular road actually started being built in the year around 1547. It was completed, so maybe 10 years back. It was started 1547. It was completed. So it started from the capital of the Koch Kingdom, which was somewhere in and around the Karotoya River, okay, in western Assam, and it went all the way to Narayanpur in Lakhimpur district presently. Okay, so from Karotoya River, the capital of the Koch Kingdom, to Lakhimpur district, to on the northern bank of the Brahmaputra, he had constructed all the way. Okay, so this was constructed by his brother known as Guhai Komal. Okay, and it extended from the Karotoya to from the Karotoya River to the Narayanpur. Okay. So what was another important thing which was done during the reign of Nara Narayan? So he reconstructed the Kamakhya temple. Okay, so that is very important because Kamakhya temple is the representative architectural and cultural structure of Assam. So it was probably constructed even in the ancient time, but then it was reconstructed by under Nara Narayan's time. Okay, so that is very important because they might ask you who reconstructed the Kamakhya temple in the medieval Assam. So it was Nara Narayan, and what was the date when it was constructed? By 1565. Okay, 1565. All right. So these are the two most important things done architecturally during the time of Koch King Nara Narayan. So under his rule and under the military command of his excellent brother Shilarai, he was able to subjugate almost the entire Brahmaputra valley at that point of time. Okay, so he even defeated the Ahoms to an extent. Okay, so what happened is that he not only defeated the Ahoms at that point of time, but he also defeated a lot of tribes in the northeast of India. For example, he defeated the Jayantiyas, he defeated the Khairem part, so he defeated the Manipur kingdom, he defeated the Kachari and the Tripura regions, the Tripura region as well. So it seems that most of the Brahmaputra valley and also the southern part of Brahmaputra, although the southern part of northeast India was also captured by Nara Narayan. So which shows a lot about how successful and politically ambitious he was. Okay, and also on top of that, he had the opportunity to expand so much because he was so blessed with a brother like Shilarai, who was not only very fast, but also he was very intelligent in the sense that he knew exactly how to defeat the enemy. Okay, so these are some of the important things that you need to know. And remember one thing, so there was a reason why the whole Guhai Kamal Ali was built from the western part of Assam to eastern part on the northern bank, because that the reason is of course because they wanted to defeat the Ahom kings at a point of time, and building a road will be the most the most feasible way of bringing more military, bringing more stock, bringing more artillery, bringing more horses, and all the things which you need for a successful battle. So for that reason, transportation is very important. Okay, so that is the reason why he built the Guhai Kamal Ali. Okay, so these are the architectural things which happened during his time. And now let's talk about another important part of his rule, that is the construction of a coin which was known as Narayani. Okay, Narayani. So it was a silver coin. So he introduced a silver coin which is known as Narayani, that greatly influenced the whole coin study of Assam. We get to learn a lot about the numismatics which was prevalent at that point of time, how the coins were structured, what material was used. Since silver was used, where was it imported from, and how was it melted and molded into a coin. So numismatics became very popular after that point of time, and eventually during the Ahom rulers, we find that okay, even they started minting coins. Okay, so that is Narayani was silver coin started by Nara Narayan. Okay, so these are the things which we have not talked about in the past, but one thing that we definitely mention is that Madhavdev and Honkordev were given patronage by the Koch kings, okay, especially by Nara Narayan. Okay, so in the next part we will talk about what were the literary achievements which were achieved as a part of the court of Nara Narayan by different literary giants which were there. Okay, so we were talking about what were the literary achievements during the times of the Koch King Nara Narayan. Okay, so remember one thing, the Koch King Nara Narayan, he was also known as Malladev. Okay, so he was also known as Malladev. Yeah, since we are already learning the aliases of all the Ahom kings, why don't we try to learn the aliases of the Koch King as well? Okay, and Silarai will be Silarai. Okay, so Malladev and Silarai, they were brothers. He was the elder brother, of course. And let me make a point first that there were a lot of literary giants, poets and dramatists, and even prose writers who were a part of the court. Okay, and that includes the like of the great saint Shankardeva, as well as another great saint of Assam, Madhavdev. Okay, so the point being that there were a lot of gems, literary gems in his court. Okay, so which brings us the question that why did Nara Narayan have so many literary giants in his court? Okay, so one way to look about it is that, as we know from the sources, that both Nara Narayan and Silarai were actually sent all the way from Assam to North India to learn Sanskrit, to learn the culture of Sanskrit learning people, to learn the culture of the elite people, to get a few things about the Aryan culture. Okay, so with learning Sanskrit, you get to know about how in the ancient past different literary sources were constructed, were written during different kings' time. Okay, so Sanskrit is not only the language of the elites, but while reading Sanskrit, while getting taught in Sanskrit, you will come across different literary sources, different poems, different poetry sources, different prose, different other concepts. Okay, so when you keep reading all these writers in Sanskrit like Kalidas or like Panini or all those great giants in the past, so eventually it affects your psyche as well. And those two brothers came back and they realized that, okay, if they have to become immortal, they better make sure that the cultural side of their kingdom is not falling apart as well. So he had to make a lot of effort to bring the cultural, the architectural side of their kingdom up there as well. And there was no other better opportunity at that point of time to actually invite a great saint like Shankardeva, who was probably in the prime of his lives, and he was in the prime of his lives, and he was not getting the support from some of the Ahom kings at that point of time, and he had to come and take refuge in the court of Nara Narayan. And because of all these reasons, because of all these factors which worked to the favor of Nara Narayan, we have a rich source of literature from his court. For example, let's start with what is another nickname for Nara Narayan. So he is also known as Vikramaditya of Assam. Okay, Vikramaditya. Okay, so his nickname was Vikramaditya. So what is so special about this name Vikramaditya? As we what comes to our mind is Chandragupta Vikramaditya, Chandragupta II from the Gupta Empire. So he was also known as Vikramaditya, Chandragupta Vikramaditya. Not only that, but the original source of the word Vikramaditya is actually a legendary king. Vikramaditya was a legendary king in ancient India, and he was known far and wide for his sagacity, for his courage, for his valiance, for his intelligence, and for his love for literature and all other different forms of culture. Okay, so he was a supreme man, he was a supreme king, well regarded, very popular, loved by the people, and he shined not just in one direction but in multi-directional character. Okay, so Vikramaditya is a legendary feature, and if you remember Bikram Betal, so Bikram Betal used to come in Doordarshan at one point of time, so it's a legendary mythological story. So that Bikram was actually from this legendary king known as Vikramaditya. So Nara Narayan was also known as Vikramaditya of Kamrup, and Vikramaditya actually we know him because of the way 57 BC was used as the Vikram Samvat. Okay, so it's called the Vikram Samvat, SAMVAT, so which means the Vikram era. Nowadays in India, the government of India follows the Saka era, which is 78 AD. Okay, but there is also another era which we should be familiar about, and it's called the Vikram Samvat 57 BC. Okay, so we talked about this. Now let's talk about. So Madhavdeva was the person who was in his court, and Madhavdeva wrote Janma Rahasya following the request of Kamalapriya, who was the wife of Shilarai. Okay, so Janma Rahasya. Okay, so Janma Rahasya was written by Madhavdeva. This is the book by Madhavdev. Of course, in the later classes of Assamese literature, we'll talk both about Shankardev and Madhavdev and their contributions to our society, and then we'll definitely talk about what are the other contributions of Madhavdev, like the Namghoka, for example. Okay, so but now during the patronage of Nara Narayan, so he wrote Janma Rahasya, and apparently this was written on the request of Kamalapriya, who was the wife of Shilarai. Okay, so that was it. Next, there was another fellow. His name is Ram Saraswati. Okay, so this is not the Kaviratna Saraswati that we talked in the time of Dulab Narayan. So Ram Saraswati translated the verses from Mahabharata. So Ram Saraswati translated the verses from Mahabharata. Okay, very obvious, because these are classics of Indian literature in Sanskrit, and obviously different people from different kingdoms under their the literary people, they will be translating, annotating the classic textbooks. So Mahabharata was chosen by Ram Saraswati, and he was very successful in that. Then there was another fellow, his name was Sridhar. Okay, so everyone knows about astrology and how a lot of people believe in astrology. So this guy called Sridhar, okay, he wrote Jyotish Shastra. Okay, so Jyotish Shastra is a book on astrology, and his name was Sridhar, not Ram Saraswati. Then there was also a mathematician. Okay, there was also a mathematician in the court of Nara Narayan, and his name was Bakul Kayastha. Okay, so not just the Gupta Empire, but even the Koch Kingdom had its share of brilliant mathematicians, and he wrote the excellent book called Lilavati. Okay, it's a treatise on mathematics, Bakul Kayastha Lilavati Mathematics. Then there was another fellow, his name is Purushottam Vidyavagish, and he wrote the book known as Pragyo Ratnamala. Okay, so it's a treatise on the Sanskrit grammar. Okay, and the name itself is very hard to pronounce, which is why I'll write it down. Okay, anything which derives itself from Sanskrit is pretty hard to pronounce, because Sanskrit, as we all know, is not a very easy language. And just like Latin, for example, no wonder they're dead. So let's say this fellow called Purushottam Vidyavagish. Purushottam Vidyavagish. Okay, he wrote a book or a treatise on Sanskrit grammar, and its name was Pragyo Ratnamala. Okay, let me just check. Prayoga Ratnamala. Okay, see, that is a thing. Prayoga Ratnamala. Okay, it's a treatise on Sanskrit grammar. Okay, even Shilarai, for that matter, was also very much interested in literature. Okay, so whenever we read history, we read about different kings who were not only telling people that, okay, you write a book on mathematics, hey, come, write a book on grammar, but they themselves used to write and read and take part in discussions and stuff like that. For example, there was Krishna Deva Raya, who was also a very noted literature in the Kannada language, and there were other kings as well who, Samudragupta for example, he was also very literate. Okay, so, and just like that, even Silarai, who was a military commander, even he was quite well read, and he also tried to annotate some verses from the poems of Jayadeva. Okay, so the poems of Jayadeva, they were written as a part of Gita Govinda. So these are poems, and they were translated by Silarai. Okay. So that shows that the king, the king's commanders, including the king itself, they were also very interested in literature. Okay, so this is important, and I have already mentioned that both Shilara and Malladev, aka Nara Narayan, were sent to North India to learn Sanskrit, and so these times that they spent outside learning about literature and different things, that really helped them and inspired them to write on their own. Okay, so that is all about the Koch Kingdom that we need to know. So now that we are done with the Koch Kingdom, let's start the main chapter of today's class. By now I guess you must have guessed what we'll be talking about. So let's start off from the loose end of the string which we left in the last class. So in the last class we were talking about Shiva Singha and his the different wives that he had, who were also called as Boroja, Fuleswari, Ambika, okay, and how the dolls were constructed in Shivsagar. Okay, so since we're done with that, let's start with another very interesting person right after Shiva Singha. So let's start with the successor of Shiva Singha, and his name is Pramatta Singha. Okay, Pramatta Singha, and the Thai name is Sunenpa. This is very important. In fact, all the Ahom kings and the Thai names are important because that is what is the fodder for questions. So Pramatta Singha, Sunenpa. In the last class, we discussed about how Ronghar is not actually constructed by Rudra Singha. Okay, Rudra Singha did construct the Ronghar, but he laid the foundation and the foundation and the bamboo structure of Ronghar. Okay, so like the very beginning of the Ronghar. Okay, but Pramatta Singha was actually the person, the ruler, who sponsored the present brick-layered actual structure of the Ronghar. Okay, so if they ask you who was the person who constructed the Ronghar, if they're not qualifying it, if they're not qualifying that question with anything like brick or bamboo or anything, you have to mention Pramatta Singha. But if they're mentioning with bamboo or just the foundation, then you have to mention Rudra Singha. Okay, so this is how you have to be a bit smart to get the question correct. Okay, but do expect this question in the next few years. Okay, so Pramatta Singha, 1744 to 1751. Builder of the Ronghar. What else did he do? Okay, so he also caused the construction of a lot of gate houses in Gorgaon. Okay, so he constructed a lot of gate houses. So gate houses were like were sort of watchmen's houses near the gate. Okay, so they had to, anyone who is coming inside the particular city of Gurgaon had to cross through these gate houses. So they had a lot of importance for the security of the kingdom. So he constructed a lot of gate houses with bricks. Okay, so the Ahom kingdom was pretty commercially viable at the point of time. They had a bit of finances, fiscal condition was good, so they sponsored the construction of gate houses. Not only that, he constructed temples in Sukreshwar. Okay, Sukreshwar in Assamese. Okay, so Hukreshwar temple was constructed by our man Pramatta Singha, and Hukreshwar temple is somewhere in Panbaza area, Panbaza and Fancy Bazaar, somewhere in between, near the river. If you go, you will see that in Guwahati. So Sukreshwar temple was constructed by him. Then there was Janardhan temple. Sukreshwar T means temple. Then Janardhan temple. Okay, so these are the two temples which were constructed in Guwahati by Pramotta Singha. Then he also raised the Rudreshwar temple in North Guwahati. Rudreshwar, okay? Rudreshwar temple in North Guwahati. Okay, Rudreshwar temple in North Guwahati. Okay, so this was in the year 1749 AD. So where his father Swargadev Rudra Singha was had breathed his last breath. Okay, so Rudra Singha was his father, and then in memory of his father, where he had his last breath, so he constructed this temple, which is known as Rudreshwar temple. Okay, so so it was a Shiva temple. Remember that Rudreshwar temple is a Shiva temple. Okay, these are some of the architectural endeavors which were done by Pramotta Singha. Let's see a few more things about him. So he was the person who started the whole tradition of bulbul fights. Okay, now bulbul is not actually a bull, it's a bird, bulbul. So bulbul fights were started in Hajo by Pramotta Singha. Okay, so let's write that as well. Bulbul fights. Where? Hajo. Hajo is slightly from 30 kilometers to the west of Guwahati. So bulbul fights in Hajo was started by Pramotta Singha. So he also built a few more temples in Hajo, like he built a Ganesh temple, and he built a dole which is known as Phakwa dole. Okay, a Ganesh temple and a Phakwa dole. These are all in Hajo in western Assam. Okay, so these were the things which were done by by Pramotta Singha. Next, let's go to his successor. Let's be quick with this because we really want to learn about the next interesting topic. Okay, so let's just get done with these cultural part very soon. So next will be Rajeshwar Singha, or his name, the Thai name will be Surempha. Not Sunenpa, but Surempha. Okay, before I start with what he did and all, let me just tell you something very honestly. So if you try to see the page of the dynasty of Ahom kings on Wikipedia, you will actually find on the right hand side the whole list of Ahom kings, around 41 or 42 Ahom kings, starting from Sukafa to the last one after the coming of the British. So if you just make a rough note of that so that you can remember the names, and even if you don't do that, you have to make a rough chart where you write down the names of the important Ahom rulers and their Thai names. Okay, because you will be asked at least one question regarding the Thai name of an Ahom king. Okay, so that has not to be neglected because it will cost you 1 mark. Okay, so now let's start with Rajeshwar Singha. What was important during his time? So this is actually very interesting because instead of the architectural things, we'll talk about a battle which was fought during his time. Okay, so this battle is quite interesting. The name itself, it's called Lota Kota Ron. Okay, so Lota Kota Ron. Lota means creepers, like the creeping plants which creep on trees and ground. Okay, very annoying things. Kota means to cut, and Ron means obviously to fight. Okay, so it's also known as a creeper cutting battle. Okay, so if they ask you Lota Kota Ron during Rajeshwar Singha, so it is also known as creeper cutting battle. So now that we know the name, the interesting name of the particular battle, let's talk about what was very important about this battle. So what happened? This battle was actually waged by the Manipuri king. Okay, his name was Jai Singha. So as you remember, Manipur will be slightly towards the southern part of Assam. So there was a king known as Jai Singha, and his political sovereignty was under attack because their kingdom was being attacked by the Burmese army. Okay, so let's say the time will be around 1765, 1766. Okay, and this particular battle was actually fought in 1768. So what happened is that the Burmese had attacked the Manipur Kingdom. And Jayasingha was suspicious that, without the help of the Ahom king and their military resources, without the military support of the Ahoms, he won't be able to survive, or he won't be able to get back his sovereignty. Okay, so he made a request to the Ahom king at that point of time, Mr. Surempa, to gather some soldiers, under an efficient leader, and then send them all the way to Manipur. Okay, so that was the condition at the point of time, and the Ahom king being like, he wanted to help, of course, because not only would that be of advantage, because probably we'll get back something in return later on, but also the Ahom kings, whenever a neighboring king sort of asked for help, it was quite relevant for them to send their own army and help them. Okay, so as a mark of that friendship, the Ahom king Rajeshwar Singha sent one of the most very able general known as Haranath Khanapati Fukan. Okay, so remember that name, because this will be associated with this battle. Okay, Haranath Khanapati Fukan was the commander, the leader of the troops which were being sent. The name itself gets it. The battle's name itself is because the road to Manipur, which they had chosen, was actually the shortcut. Okay, so they did not have much idea about how the road will be. And even now, if we try to go to Manipur through the hills, even now we'll find out so many trees, so many creepers, so many venomous insects, reptiles, and all that kind of dangerous things on the way. Even now, because it's full of jungles. So if that's the case right now, imagine how the roads would have been in the times of the Ahom kings, and when it was not a proper road. It was not even a proper road. There was no road. It was a shortcut through the hills, and which resulted in a lot of people dying of hunger, of snake bites, of cholera, of syphilis, of different sorts of diseases started happening, and people were collapsing, and people were morally demoralized. Okay, so it was not that much of a successful invasion, and so the Ahoms lost a lot of their men, their soldiers, and eventually they had to send another general through a different, long, but a proper safe way to finally make sure that Jayasingha gets back his kingdom from the marauding Burmese. Okay, so the reason why I'm quoting this and I'm talking about this is because it's important, because once the Ahom king was successful in reinstalling Jayasingha as the king of Manipur, Jayasingha in return as a gift of friendship, or a gift of helping him, so he gave his very beautiful daughter, whose name was Kuranga Nayani. Okay, so Jayasingha's daughter's name was Kuranga Nayani. Okay, so he gave his daughter as a mark of thanks, the mark of being grateful to the Ahom king. Okay, so we'll talk about how this is relevant when we talk about what happened to the Ahom kings during the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, so for now, that's all you need to remember. Under Rajeshwar Singha's time, there is a particular piece of literature which is also very interesting, and the name itself is also very interesting. It's known as Sakeri Pheti Buronji. Okay, it's known as Sakeri or Sakeri Pheti. Pheti means Phetikhap. Okay, Buronji. So this is just like the rest of the Buronjis, like Devdhayakam Buronji or Tungkhungia Buronji. This is like a very small chronicle. It's called the Sakeri Pheti Buronji. Okay, and what is the most important thing about this Buronji is that it was written by Numoli Borgohain. Okay, it was written by a person known as Numoli Borgohain, and it was written as a sort of criticism of a Borbora whose name was Kirti Chandra Borbora. Okay, Kirti Chandra Borbora. This R, C is for Chandra. So this was like a vehement indictment of all the bad things, the corruption, the bad things, and the illegitimacy, the illegitimate lineage of Kirti Chandra Borbarua, who was holding a very high and important post of Borbarua at that point of time. So Numoli Borbarua did not care. I mean, he was like, okay, I am going to go and check out all the things that this guy has done, which is wrong as per him, and all the corruption and all the illegitimacy that he has shared, that he was not supposed to be a Borbarua, that he doesn't come from a noble family. So he tried to sort of put the cat out of the bag. Okay, so that's sort of a situation, that's what he created. And Kirti Chandra Borbarua, of course, did not like what was happening, because he was being criticized. A power holder was being criticized in a piece of work. You can all imagine what is going to happen. Okay, so that happens almost everywhere in history. So the criticizers, the critics will be suppressed. Okay, they will be purged out, and all the pieces of work will be either burnt down or they will be destroyed, which is exactly what happened during that point of time. So under the command of Kirti Chandra Borbarua, all the historians, all the Buronji writers, and all the Buronjis were perused from top to bottom, looking for other pieces of criticism, and then a lot of those pieces of history were also destroyed at the point of time, and that meant we lost a lot of evidence that we could have probably used to learn a bit more about what was happening in the kingdom at the point of time. Okay, so that's it. Shakari Fati Buronji, written by Numoli Borgohain, criticizing Kirti Chandra Borbarua. Okay, that's all you need to remember, and under the reign of Rajeshwar Singha. Okay, so that's about what you need to learn about this. And Rajeshwar Singha's time was from 1751 to 69. 1751 to 69, a period of around 18 years. This brings us to the end of just the part before we start with the Moamoria Rebellion. So now we will talk about the most interesting part of our lecture today. Okay, friends, let's start with the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, so whenever we read history, we are all interested in the revolutions. Okay, because revolutions means a big turmoil. Okay, a big change of the power holders in a particular society, a big change in the society, the power dynamics, the social relations, the mode of production, the lifestyle, the culture, the names, and the whole system as a whole is changed whenever there is a revolution which was happening. Okay, so learning about history is all about how things have changed in the past, and even while we are reading about mainly the modern or medieval history of the world, we will probably read about the Great French Revolution, which happened towards the end of the 18th century, around 1789, the cracking of the Bastille Day, and the French Revolution, which led to the whole concept of fraternity, equality, and liberty. Okay, so and apart from the French Revolution, we also know about the big things like unification of Italy, or for example the unification of the Germany. Okay, and American Revolution for that matter. Okay, the independence of America from its colonies, that is Britain. Okay, so history has been spotted by a lot of revolutions, and this really is a sort of very interesting topic for us to study. So let's talk about something which is very homegrown, which is যোনটো আমাৰ মাজতে হৈছিলে, যাৰ মানে যোনখিনি consequences, okay, যোনখিনি পৰিফল আছিলে, যোনখিনি মানে আপোনালোকৰ তাৰ consequences, সেইখিনি আমি এতিয়াও দেখিবলৈ পাওঁ. Okay, so let's learn a bit about what was happening in the Moamoria Rebellion. Let's start off with the definition, then we'll go with the causes. Okay, let's start with the definition of what is the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, so the Moamoria Rebellion is something which happened during the 18th century, precisely from 1769 to 1811. Okay, so how many years is that? So that's almost around 42 years. Okay, so in all these years, there were a number of small scale as well as large scale revolts, by different tribes, different communities in different parts of Assam against the Ahom nobility and the Ahom monarchy. Okay, and that is what we call as the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, so if we talk about a very formal definition, so it's a conflict between the Moamorias, who were mainly Motoks, okay, or Motoks consisting of Shutias, Morans, then a bit of Kosaris as well. So it's a Motoks were a combination of different tribes, okay, different tribes, as well as a lot of non-caste Hindu people, versus the Ahom monarchy. Okay, so probably we'll talk about three kings, okay, that were a part of this whole rebellion. So we'll talk about starting from Lakshmi Singha, which is the part of the first rebellion. Then we'll talk about Gorinath Singha, who was the second one, and then we'll talk about the final one, which will be Kamaleswar Singha. Okay, so there will be three rulers under whose reign the whole Moamoria Rebellion happened. Okay, and that is how we'll be dividing the class right now. So let's start with what were the causes of the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, so before we go to the causes, let's just talk about briefly about what else was happening during the Moamoria Rebellion. What were the consequences? So take my word, the consequences were immense. Okay, the consequences were life-changing. The whole trajectory of Assam, the whole political, social and economic trajectory of Assam changed a lot because of the Moamoria Rebellion. It led to the Burmese invasion, it led to the destruction of economy, it led to an entire agricultural tract of Assam to being without any agricultural products. It led to large-scale depopulation. We lost the demographic dividend. It created internal dissensions, it created political instability, which was eventually used by the Burmese to invade Assam and create a lot of tension, marauding people, raping women, taking our resources, pillaging the villages, and eventually also led to the coming of the British. So if you try to make a link, you will figure out that this particular rebellion is extremely important from the point of view of understanding modern Assamese history. Okay, so let's talk about a few causes of the Moamoria Rebellion. So the moment I start talking about it, you will be very familiar with them because we have already talked about it. At least we have talked about what was happening, which were the causes. Okay, so let's talk about the first cause. Okay, so this will be helpful more for your mains examination. So the first cause is the suppression of Neo-Vaishnavism. Okay, suppression of Neo-Vaishnavism. Okay, suppression of Neo-Vaishnavism. How was the suppression of Neo-Vaishnavism occurring at that point of time? So if you remember, the first thing was that Hankardev and Madhavdev had to flee from the Ahom Kingdom all the way to the Koch Kingdom. Okay, what does it mean? It means that they did not find it very promising. They did not find a promising career. They did not find good patronage. They did not find resources and the mental they did not find the intellectual freedom to actually start preaching their own language. Why did it happen? Okay, so by now you know that the Ahoms, starting from Sudangpha, started taking elements of the Aryan culture. They started changing their names to Singha, like Rudra Singha or Shiva Singha. Okay, so they started worshipping Shiva, Vishnu. In other words, they were Sakta worshippers. Okay, Ahoms were Sakta worshippers, especially Rudra Singha, Shiva Singha, and all these later Ahom kings, just before the Moamoria Rebellion. Now, the competition was between Neo-Vaishnavism and Sakta form of worship because they are what we call as bête noire. Okay, in French or even in English nowadays, it's called bête noire, which means common enemies. Okay, so of course, because Neo-Vaishnavism taught about equality, no use of rituals, talked about a direct connection between people and the god, which was known as Hari. Okay, so there were no rituals, there were no sacrifices, there were no glittering mantras. Okay, so it was very egalitarian in its approach, while on the other hand the whole Sakta form of worship was based on Brahmanical rituals. Sorry, it was based on rituals, it was based on class division, it was based on maintaining a sort of elite class and the rest of the popular Shudras. Okay, so the Sakta form of worship was based on rituals and giving prayer and sacrificing animals' blood and all of those things. So even from the definitions, you will figure out that these are very antagonist to each other. That's why I'm using the word betenua. Okay, so if that's the case, so naturally there was a tension which was building in the Ahom kingdom. Because of Hongordev and Madhavdev, a lot of the people in Assam at that point of time were influenced by their teachings of egalitarianism. Okay, just imagine that situation. Let's say the people were following Hongordev and Madhavdev, while on the other hand the state was sponsoring a form of religion which was not adjustable, which is not very complementary to the Neo-Vaishnavism. Okay, so naturally the people were a bit dissatisfied. On top of that, a lot of the Neo-Vaishnavite leaders, the religious leaders like Nityananda Dev, okay, there were a few more Mahantas as well, who were slowly beginning to get some popularity. Okay, they're beginning to become very socially influencing. Okay, they had far and wide, their reach was far and wide. Some of them were looked up to as leaders, as influencers. People were following them. People were obeying whatever they were asking to do. I'm talking about the Neo-Vaishnavite leaders who were part of the Ahom kingdom. Okay, so naturally the king was the Ahom monarchy. They were a bit taken aback. They did not like it that someone else was getting the charisma, the popularity and the power. Okay, so the power is not just about wielding a sword and trying to kill people, or having artillery, or having a lot of money. Okay, power is also about legitimacy. Okay, so power is also about how legitimate, how intellectual and how popular you are. So if there is one religious head from the Neo-Vaishnavite community who is looked up to by people and who is followed by people, and if he says that do not follow the king, or the king is not right, so the people will actually start believing and following that Vaishnavite leader. Okay, so, and probably in a lot of cases that really happened at the point of time, and so the Ahom kings at that point of time did not, obviously they wouldn't like someone else to take the limelight and get all the charisma and influence upon the people, and the Ahom kings realized that the whole Neo-Vaishnavite trend is not reducing. It's in fact because of its egalitarianism and all-inclusive structure, which brought inside their circle all the non-caste Hindu, include people like the tribal people, the people who were depressed classes at a point of time, since the religion itself was so egalitarian and gave birth to brotherhood. So the Ahom kings knew that this is something which is definitely going to grow, and we have to somehow, like I'm talking about from the Ahom kings perspective, so they were thinking like, okay, so these are very popular, we have to somehow suppress them. So they killed, they murdered, they tortured a lot of their leaders. Okay, a lot of the leaders of Neo-Vaishnavite religion, like for example this one person, Mahanta known as Nityananda Deva. I'm just giving one example. There were a few more, but it doesn't come to my mind. I'm just trying to explain it to you that he was tortured and murdered at the word of Ahom kings. So people naturally they did not like it. So that was one thing, the divergence between Sakta form of worship and the Neo-Vaishnavism. Another thing will probably be, not probably, I mean it definitely is, the whole Sanad of Rudrakingha in 1702. So Sanad was a religious order, we already talked about it, what it did. So this order really said that, okay, all the non-Brahmin or the aka the Shudra Mahantas, you are not allowed to initiate or make any Brahmin as your disciple. Okay. what did the Sanad of 1702 do? It divided the Brahmanical Satras, the Brahmanical disciples, and the non-Brahmanical disciples, because it said that, okay, you are a Shudra Mahanta, you are not allowed to initiate Brahman disciples. Okay, now why was that a problem? Because in a lot of these hotras or Neo-Vaishnavite monasteries, especially the hotras of the Kala Hongoti school, for example, the Mayamara Hotra, which is what we're talking about right now as we get to know. So in all these hotras were a bit more egalitarian than the Brahmanical hotras of Majuli. This is what we already talked about. Okay, so since they were more egalitarian, naturally they had a lot of Brahmin disciples. Amongst the disciples, there were a lot of Brahmins and there were a lot of Shudra Mahantas as well. So whatever was being banned by the Sanad of 1702 was already happening in a lot of these egalitarian hotras like the Mayamara Hotra in the Eastern Assam. Naturally, since they were being banned, they were being prohibited, so this caused a lot of grievance amongst not only the common people but also the religious leaders. Okay, and do remember one thing, that the whole Mayamara Hotra, which was from Eastern Assam and which was probably the most persuasive, the most powerful hotras of the Moamoriyas, the hotra under whose influence, the leaders under whose influence the whole Moamoria Rebellion sort of got its energy or its enthusiasm or the power. Okay, so that particular hotra became the disciples became very angry with these orders. Okay, so that was very important, and they had the reputation that the disciples very blindly followed their leaders. Okay, for example, their founder was Aniruddha Deva. Okay, so Aniruddha Deva and including his successors from the Mayamara Hotra were blindly followed by the worshippers. Whatever they said would have probably been believed by the disciples, and so they were ready to give their blood, they were ready to lay down their lives for the betterment of their particular Hotra and its leader. Okay, so from judging from all these things, you realize how vulnerable the situation was at that point of time in Assam, and these were some of the religious reasons why the whole Moamoria Rebellion happened. So I will not take it down because you need to know all the reasons. So 1, 2, 3, let's talk about a very important economic reason. Okay, this is very interesting. This is because of the pike system. Okay, the pike system. So whenever you have to write an answer for any of those big questions in the maze or in the interview, when they will be asking you any question as if what were the causes of the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, so it's better if you try to divide the whole line of thought into a few structured patterns. Like, think about a political side of it, think about the social side of it, think about the social religious side of it, which was what was happening here, which was what we were discussing. Think about the economic side of it. Okay, so any major event in history will definitely have an economic reason as to why it is happening. Okay, that is a very Marxist line of thought, but I'm not asking you to believe it very blindly, but it does ring true for a lot of different major events in history. We have to look at the economics, what was happening in the economy. Okay, so let's see what was wrong with the pike system. Okay, so the pike system was like a complete manual slavery system based on giving your labor to get sanction from the king and to get a plot of land where you can probably cultivate and keep a piece of it produced to yourself. There was no money involved in the pike system. Okay, so compared to the rest of India, where trade was very important, because with trade you can actually improve the economy by importing lesser stuff and exporting more stuff, okay, by creating a surplus. But without trade, it's very hard for any particular state to be economically very, very flourishing. Okay, so since there was no trade, since there was no money, since there was no monetizing of the economy at that point of time. So it was very hard for people to climb the social ladder. Okay. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that there was very less social mobility during the Ahom period. Okay, there was very less social mobility because people have had to be people. Most of the people, if you're not a noble, if you're not like Fukon or Buragohai or Borgohai, you were bound to your plot of land and your particular village, and you have to keep cultivating it. And you have to keep giving your labor as a service to the king for building roads and bridges and different architectural things. Not only that, you have to go and fight the wars where you probably won't have any benefit. You have to give down your life without any monetary benefit if you are, let's say, if you're not interested in being a pike. Okay, let's say I'm not interested in being an engineer. I want to teach people, I want to mentor people for the civil services. Okay, so I will not be allowed to do that point of time. So imagine what will happen to India right now if we say that, okay, engineers, you guys will have to be engineers, you can't try out anything else right now. So that was exactly what was happening with the pike system. Everyone was feeling suffocated. They had no option to change their geography, to their location, their position in the social ladder. They did not have money to take part in trade. They could not start a startup. Okay, they could not be an entrepreneur. Okay, so basically they could not change their position in lives, and they felt very stuck, and they felt as if there was all stagnation in the economy. Their lives are not improving, and so this created a very strong and intense grievance inside their hearts. And they decided that, okay, fine, I'm done with the pike system. We are not going to work as pikes. Not only that, the whole system of the pike thing is that there were a lot of Neo-Vaishnavite disciples like the Keolia celibataires, the celibate monks who were exempted from the pike system. Of course, at times like Pratap Singh's time, they were using to build a Dudarali, but that is different. But the point I'm trying to make is that people saw that, okay, the disciples of the Neo-Vaishnavites, they were not working as spies, they were probably working as a part of the Satras, and they were also gaining in popularity. The Satras were gaining in popularity, they were getting pikes from the king, and they were trying to seed their roots and expand their power and all. So all these things sort of made all the economic changes. Okay, the pike system really caused the grievance in the people's mind, and they started revolting. Okay, so these are the reasons why the Moamoria Rebellion started. So now, all right. So now that we have mentioned and discussed the causes of the rebellion, now let's start and divide the rebellion into three parts: the reign of three kings, starting with Mr. Lakshmi Singha, and talk about what exactly were the occurrences, the major occurrences which happened during the rebellion. Okay, so we'll start off with Lakshmi Singha. So he ruled intermittently from 69 to 80, 1769 to 1780. So as I already said, that the soul of the Moamoria rebellion was started by the disciples of the Mayamora Khotra, and they were the harbingers, they were the most enthusiastic rebels of the rebellion. Okay, so now we'll talk about what exactly happened in during that time. Okay, so what happened was that the disciples of the Mayamora Khotra were already very disappointed with the behavior of the Ahom kings at that point of time. Not only the kings, but also the different ministers like the Borgohai, but especially the Borbora at that point of time. There was one person known as Kirti Chanda Borbora, and we had already talked about how powerful he was and how corrupted and the sort of immoral and illicit, inappropriate behaviors that he portrayed towards the disciples of the Moamoriya Khotra. Think about Sakeri Feti Bronzi criticizing him. So this Kirti Chanda Borbora was not in good terms with the disciples of the Moamoriya Khotra. So what happened was, so the Moamoras, they were residing in the eastern part of Assam. They were composed of different tribes like the Kosaris, they were Morans, they were Motoks, they were Shutias. There were a lot of caste Hindu people as well as a part of the disciples of Moamoriya Khotra. Okay, according to the Ahoms at that point of time, according to history, they were supposed to provide honey, they were supposed to provide ivory, elephants, and a lot of other natural resources towards the Ahom king as a part of being a disciple of the Moamoriya Khotra. Okay, so they were in charge of handing over good quality elephants towards the Ahom king. So once what happened is that the representatives of those particular people who were supposed to give elephants, for example, there was one person known as Ragha, okay, and there was another person known as Nahor. Ragha and Nahor. Ragha and Nahor. Okay, so so these were the primary rebels who started the whole rebellion. So once they sent over some elephants to the Borbora for the king, and the elephant was not in a good condition. But probably the elephant probably was in a good condition, but then Kirtichandra Borbora criticized the quality of elephants as being lean, okay, so as being physically not very powerful. Okay, elephants were used for hauling at that point of time. They were supposed to be robust and healthy. Okay, so the main complaint of the Borbora was that the elephants being provided by Raghav and Nahar, oh, they're not of good quality, what are you providing, you guys are worthless, you're not even doing your job properly. So that was the incident which sort of culminated the rebellious tendencies of these two people. There was also another person known as Gagini. He was the Deka Mahanta. Okay, Gagini was the Deka Mahanta. So he was the young Mahanta, which means he was the son of the Mahanta, the leader, the religious leader of the Moamoriya Khotra at the point of time. And all three of them, including their wives known as Radha and Rukmini, 1 and 2. So all these 5 people made a decision to rebel against the king, and they were very successful at the point of time, because initially the Ahom king Lakshmi Kingho and also Kirtichandra Borbora, they sort of underestimated the power which the rebels yielded. Okay, so why did they underestimate? Well, because there was no large-scale rebellion before what happened during this phase in the Ahom kingdom. Okay, the Ahom kings, the monarchy and the military, they were used to fighting big Western rulers like the Mughals or the Afghan, the Turkish generals which were invading. Okay, but they were not used to rebellions inside their own camp. They were not used to rebellions inside their own country, inside their own kingdom. Okay, so that is the reason why they underestimate. What was the scale of underestimation? Well, according to sources, the rebels had around 7 lakhs. Okay, they had around 7 lakh population of the rebels who were ready to give down their lives. We already said how religious and how blind they were in their bhakti towards their leader. So naturally, since they were feeling a bit disappointed, they were being insulted, their Mahanta was being insulted, so they made a resolution. They were successful in defeating the Ahom forces. They even managed to get hold of the palace in Gorgaon. Okay, they were able to depose Lakshmi Singha and take hold of the power at Gorgaon, which was the capital of the Ahoms at that point of time. Okay, so that was very important event, the first event which happened. So that's what happened, and then Raghav was made. So once they captured the palace in Gorgaon, so Deka Mahanta was made the king, and Raghav took the title of Borbora instead of Kirtichandra Borbora. Okay, so now that they have tried to establish themselves as part of the nobility, they started minting coins, they started giving regulatory orders, they started trying to rule the kingdom just like the Ahom state from Gorgaon. Okay, now what happened exactly is that it's very obvious they did not have any experience of administration. They had no experience of being power holders or rulers, or or being a part of the royal institution. They were not a part of the monarchy. Okay, so and they had no historical experience of being in a seat of power at any point of history. Okay, so naturally what happened is that there was a lot of political instability. There were a lot of personal ambitions between them, turmoils, fights between them, and eventually they could not keep the power to themselves, and eventually they were defeated again by the Ahom forces. Okay, so because of internal dissension and inexperience, the rebels could not sustain the power for long, and so this is where the whole the Lotakota run and the role of Kurongo Nayani, who was sort of gifted to the king at that point of time, Rajeshwar Singha, by the Manipuri king Jaya Singha. So because the Ahoms had helped them to get the kingdom from the Burmese invasion, so now is the time when the Manipuri queen will be helping the Ahom deposed ruler, aka Lakshmi Singha, to get back on his throne. Okay, so Kurongo Nayani, with the support of some of the royalist forces, sort of took the advantage of political instability and inexperience of these Raghav and all his comrades, and they gained stronghold once again in Gorgaon and in the Ahom capital. Okay, so that was what happened, and they recaptured Rangpur, and Lakshminath Singha was reinstalled in 1770 AD. Okay, so that was the first incident which happened. So naturally, the condition in the kingdom at the point of time was one of political instability. There were no certainty about who was ruling. Many rebels were, of course, being killed by the royalist forces, and royalist forces were being killed by the rebels. So it's like a very unstable situation. A lot of vested interests were trying to gain advantage of that whole fluid situation at the point of time, which always happens in history. And the best contenders will be who? The best contenders will be someone who's not exactly the king, but a prince, but a vassal ruler, or someone who is powerful but not the king as of now. So what happened is that a lot of these Ahom small princes from different parts of the kingdom started revolting. Okay, they started rebelling against Lakshmi Singha. Who were they? Okay, so there were two important princes who were revolting at the point of time, and the first one was Bhudhar Singha, and another one was Malau Tipamia Guhai. Okay, Malau Tipamia Guhai. So these were the people, the royal Ahom princes, not exactly the king, but they were trying to rebel. Okay, so that was the second thing which happened, and that also created a lot of instability in the kingdom at the point of time, and it was sort of annoying for the king at the point of time. Third incident will be the rebellion of the Dorong princes. Okay, so what is the history of Dorong? So as we all know, it was a part of the Koch Kingdom at one point of time. So what happened in the Dorong princes, the Dorong kingdom's case, is that they were not happy with the relationship, the economical relationship, the trade relationship which was forming between them and the Ahom kingdom. So if we delve a bit into history, so we'll figure out that a lot of the traders from the Dorong region, they were not allowed to freely trade 24/7 in the important places like Guwahati. Okay, so a lot of people from Dorong as well as Kamrup, especially the traders, moneylenders, and everyone who was into business, they were given a lot of problem. They were not allowed to freely trade with the people of the neighboring kingdoms from Guwahati. So there was always some sort of a trade restrictions which was imposed by the Ahom kings on the people and the tradesmen from the Dorong region. Okay, so that was naturally one of the grievances which the people had in that region. Another one was that after the battle of Itakuli, when Godadar Singha, he sort of won over all the Mughals, like Ram Singha was defeated, and then Guwahati was sorry, not Ram Singha, but Mughals were defeated. Guwahati was recaptured after the death of Lasit Borphukon. During that point of time, there was a treaty with the Dorong princes as well, taking advantage of the situation that the mighty Ahoms defeated the mighty Mughals. So Godadar Singha took the advantage and formed the commercial treaty with the Dorong region that their kings and princes, they have to provide not only money, but also they had to provide pikes to the Ahom kingdom. Okay, they had to give pikes to the Ahom kingdom. They were sort of made to behave like a subsidiary, okay, like something low than the Ahoms. Okay, so that was why a lot of the people, Dorong Rajas, also tried to revolt against the Ahom kings, which formed a part of the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, so that was the third thing that happened. Another important thing which happened was schism in the Sakta camp. So by this time we had already talked about a person known as Krishnaram Nyayabagish, the Brahmin who was not an Assamese Brahmin, who was brought all the way from Bengal by Rudra Singha. Okay, so what happened was that so as we already talked about how the Krishnaram Nyayabagish, when he was finally called, he was installed as the Parbotia Gukhai, because his residence as well as his jurisdiction was the Nilasol Hills, aka the place of the Kamakhya temple. So Nyayabagish was called as the Parbotia Gukhai. Now what happened? The king at that point of time, so he said, the Ahom king, he said that Lakshmi Singha said that, okay, no, I'm not going to be a disciple of Parbotia Gukhai, so but I will be a disciple of another Gukhai, and he was known as Moamoria Gukhai. Okay, so Moamoria Gukhai. Okay, so this was the whole schism was because Lakshminath Singha gave preference to Moamoria Gukhai and became his disciple rather than continuing the trend which was sustained since his predecessors about giving about being disciples of the Parbotia Gukhai, okay, aka Nilasol Hills. So Moamoria became the main important person right now, and that led to a schism between the disciples of both these camps. Okay, so that was another thing which happened at a point of time. So this brings us to the end of the first part of the Moamoria Rebellion, which is what happened during the times of Lakshmi Singha. Next, let's talk about another ruler. His name was Gaurinath Singha. Gaurinath Singha, S.C. Singha, or Suhit Pungpha. Suhit Pungpha. Okay, pretty long name, but then by now you are used to it. So Gaurinath Singha or Suhit Pungpha. Okay, so this was between 1780. So Lakshminath was from 1769 to 1780, and this guy is from 1780 to 1795. Okay, this is like the second part of the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, so what happened during these Gaurinath Singha's time? So after the first phase of the rebellion, when the royalist forces were finally successful to somewhat sustain their stronghold in Rangpur and Gorgaon, there was some sort of a stability, political stability. What they did not waste any time in murdering and butchering a lot of the rebels from the rebel camp. The Ahom monarchy, they started butchering the rebels, and according to some sources, around 70 lakhs rebels were butchered at that point of time. So that is a grave thing. That is how they started the second part of the rebellion. And in this part, let's see who were the small petty rulers who were sort of resurfacing, sort of trying to overcome the Ahom monarchy and gain privilege and power in society. So there was one guy known as Horihor Tati, and he, along with the support of Dafla chiefs, revolted in 1786. So remember, this guy is Horihor Tati, and he was with Dafla chiefs. Dafla was a tribe. Okay, Dafla. So Horihor Tati and Dafla chiefs, they sort of got together and made a plan to rebel against the Ahom kings. Okay, so that was in 1786, and they were successful in capturing Rangpur once again. So this happened in 1786, and they were successful in recapturing Rangpur. Okay, so the first one was done by Deka Mohanto and Raghav Moran and all those people, and the second time it was taken by Horihor Tati along with the Dafla chiefs. Okay, next we will know about a very important person. His name was Purnananda Buragohai. So let me just repeat one more point once again. We are not supposed to write an essay on what was done by Purnananda Buragohai because of course we are not studying a master's level course in Assam history. What we need to know is that these names that figure up, that pop up during our discussion, we need to know in which time frame were they active and what was like the most important things that they did. Okay, so Purnananda Buragohai was in the second part of Gaurinath Singha, and what was he responsible for? So he was the Buragohai. So he was the topmost cabinet minister. He was not only very patriotic, he not only was interested in sustaining the Ahom monarchy and sort of living up to the expectations of his post. Buragohai, all the great Buragohais in the past, like for example Aton Buragohai, did a lot of things for the benefit, for the sustenance of the state, the Ahom state. Okay, so even he was very loyal, very patriotic. He was also very intelligent, and he was also full of grit. Okay, so he made sure that whenever there was a rebellion, to suppress it and to ensure that at least some part of the Ahom capital around Gorgaon and all were not taken by the rebels. So by that time the Horihor Tati had already taken Rangpur, but Mr. Purnananda Buragohai was still fighting from in and around Jorhat area. Okay, so what is he famous for? So he constructed a rampart which is known as Bibuddhigor. So this rampart was known as Bibuddhigor. It was constructed in Ladoigor. Okay, Upper Assam. So Bibuddhigor is something which beats the brain. Bibuddhi, something which beats the intellect, something which confuses. So the enemy gave the name of Bibuddhigor to the whole Gor of Ladoigor because apparently the enemy could not even once sort of break the structures, the ramparts that he built, okay, under his supervision that was built. Okay, so that is why he's known for Bibuddhigor. Okay, that's the role of Purnananda Buragohai. Now there were a few other small rulers who were coming up, rebels who were coming up in different parts of our kingdom. For example, in Majuli there was one person known as Hauha. Okay, so this is how you will remember. In Majuli, Hauha was carrying out the rebellion, and there was a person known as Gobha in Lakhimpur. Okay, Gobha, Gobha. He was in Lakhimpur. So these are the different rebels from different parts who were slightly successful in beating down the royal forces. So these two, and there was one more. His name was Sindhuran Hazarika. So he was from Nagaon. Okay, so this could probably be match the following questions, as in Majuli Hoha, Gobha Lakhimpur, and Sindhuran Hazarika in Nagaon. Okay, so that is the reason why Nagaon people are also known as Raja Kheda Nogoya. Okay, so that sort of phrase delved and is also relevant even today, because in our folk tales we hear about Raja Kheda Gorgoya, Nogoya. So though that whole phrase itself means that when Gorinath Singha was running from this part of Assam to other part, because his capital was snatched away by the rebels, so he had gone to Guwahati to get support from external forces. He had gone to Nagaon. On his way, when he was residing in Nagaon, of course, if there is a royal camp, so they will need a lot of food and other utilities and resources. So they, since they're not producing, since they're out of their capital, so they have to like forcefully get it from the different villages and villagers. So the Nagaon people were very harassed. They were not happy with the Gorinath Singha being there and forcefully taking stuff from the people. So that is why they started to rebel against him under the leadership of Sindhuran Hajorika, and they were successful in thwarting of Gorinath Singha from their place, and which is why they earned the whole title of Raja Kheda Nogoya. So now that we have talked about the different rebels during Gorinath Singha's time, now we'll talk about a very important thing which happened during the same period. It's known as the 1792 Captain Welsh, or Captain Welsh, Welsh, Captain Welsh. Okay, so Captain Welsh had come to Assam, so it's known as Captain Welsh expedition. So I'll just give you a brief summary of what was happening at the point of time. So what was happening is that because there was a lot of political instability in Assam, as I have said, a lot of the small petty rulers who were aiming at increasing their political influence. So they saw that the situation is good right now because the Ahom king is not powerful enough. So why don't we try to gather, why don't we try to establish our own supremacy in this particular period? And so there was this particular person known as Krishna Narayan. Okay, Krishna Narayan from Doram. So he was very ambitious, and so he because he was he had a bit of money. So what he did is he tried to get hold of a lot of mercenary soldiers who were known as Barkhandazes. Okay, so remember this term, Barkhandas soldiers. So these were mercenaries, or they will fight if you give them money, so they can be bought. They were mostly composed of sannyasis, or they were also composed of Rajputs and then Awadhi people, a lot of people from North India. Okay, but mostly they were composed of sannyasis. They were also composed of some landless ryots or farmers or peasants. They were usually used in Bengal for any political motive, like for example zamindars used to use the Barkhandazes to sort of get the produce from the peasants, to get the rent on time, to establish their clout, to fight against other zamindars. So they were mercenaries who can be bought and used for our own political or any personal ambitions. Mr. Krishna Narayan also thought that, okay, fine, things are really not going well here, so why don't we call some Barkhandazes, because they were very skillful at like looting people or murdering people and then living on very less resources. Okay, so, and they could be bought with money. So that was the reason why Barkhandazes were brought all the way from Bengal and Bihar to Assam. And the Barkhandazes, once they were brought here, they saw that, okay, fine, there are so many natural resources out here. There are people who can be looted. So basically, Krishna Narayan lost control of the Barkhandazes. They were fighting against the king, of course, the Gorinath Singha. The Ahom forces were getting killed by the Barkhandazes. The Barkhandas were being lot of being very annoying to the Ahoms, okay, to the Ahom kings. The Ahom kings did not like the presence of Barkhandas in their kingdom, because not only because they were pillaging and marauding the common people, but also because they were skilled at fighting against the Ahom soldiers, and that led to even more political instability. Just imagine, they were already the Moamoria rebels who were fighting and giving the Ahom king a hard time, and on top of that, if you have another freaking enemy like Barkhandas, so that will definitely get over the head of the Ahom king. So what Gaurinath Singha did at that point of time, and I really understand his position, I totally sympathize with him, is that he wrote a letter to the Governor General at that point of time of India. And like, can you guess who was the Governor General during 1791, 1792? Well, of course, that was the great Lord Cornwallis, right? The guy who gave us the Daroga, the guy who gave us the Cornwallis Code, or the position of Superintendent of Police, or the SP. Of course, as well as a permanent settlement system. So Cornwallis was definitely a very powerful and independent-minded British Governor General of early modern India. And so because he got the letter from Gaurinath Singha saying that, okay, we are writing to you because we are requesting you to sort of relieve us from the misery that we are facing right now because of the marauding nature of the Barkhandas, and because they cannot be controlled, they cannot be tamed, we need your help to get them out of our country, and then we need some political stability where we will pay you and probably you can get some more resources from out of here. So then Cornwallis was definitely a very smart fellow. It was around 1790s, early 1790s. So the Anglo-Maratha wars were going on. Anglo-French wars had already happened, and the French were thrown away from the country by the Britishers. The Danish people, the other colonial powers, the Dutch people, they had their bases in different other countries. So by the time it was the middle part of the 18th century, the French were the only colonial competitors that the Britishers had, and by 1790s even the French were out. So we can say that after Warren Hastings, after Robert Clive, the Britishers sort of had established the political control over most parts of the mainland India. They had set their presidencies in Bengal, Bihar and Orissa by the time. So now it was a very proper time for the British Empire at the point, or the company we can say. It was a very good time for the East India Company to expand its trade relations with the rest of India, like Assam or Northeast or even the Southeast Asia, right? So they saw that because the king itself from Assam, Gaurinath Singha, was writing and requesting them to give to sort of show him a favor and send some soldiers and help them. So this is like killing two birds with the same stone for Lord Cornwallis, because by the time he had already known that Assam is very, very rich in natural resources, especially ivory, then especially for aromatic plants, there was coal, there was natural gas, probably a lot of other natural resources which were yet to be discovered. Okay, so he knew the economic value of this particular place, so he chose the most apt person for that particular job. He chose Captain Welsh and said that, okay, fine, you take 6 companies of army with you, arm them with the best of the rifles that you can get at that point of time, and then we'll finance it, and you go and see how the things are in Assam, go form a commercial treaty with Gaurinath Singha. Of course, Captain Welsh came all the way to Assam, and he was very successful at defeating the Barkhandas, and after a lot of negotiations with Nara Narayan as well as Gaurinath Singha, so they were finally able to sort of write down a treaty which is known as the Commercial Treaty of 1793. Okay, so eventually there was a treaty. It's called Commercial Treaty. This was between Gaurinath Singha and Captain Welsh. So what were the features of this treaty? The first feature is that the customs duty was fixed at 10%. So the customs duty of importing as well as exporting merchandise and stuff from Assam to the rest of India was 10%, both for the imports and for the exports. And there were two customs houses which were constructed, one in Kandahar and the other in Guwahati. So Guwahati, GHY short form, and Kandahar. These were two customs houses that were constructed at a point of time, and rice and other grains were exempted from any duties. These were the important terms of the treaty, but the most important term that we need to see is that the treaty said that the people of the state of Assam, the people of Assam, they cannot trade with any other European power other than the British, unless they take the permission from the East India Company. Okay, so now this should ring a bell in your brain by now, because this reminds you exactly of the subsidiary alliance, treaty which was initiated by Lord Wellesley. Okay, so this is exactly like subsidiary alliance, because a foreign company, a foreign power is trying to get control of your foreign relations, of your commercial relations with a foreign nation. Okay, so someone from outside is saying that, okay, fine, we will do this, we'll do that, we'll fix the duty at this, but you are not allowed to trade with anyone else. You are not allowed to get anyone else to come to your country and to trade unless we allow it. Okay, so your foreign and your commercial trade relations will be supervised by us. Okay, so this marks a strict comparison with the subsidiary alliance treaty. Okay, so this is important. And what was the significance of the commercial treaty? The significance was that this was the first time that trade relations were established by the Assamese, the Ahom Kingdom, with the rest of India. Okay, this was the first time that the Ahom king by himself is inviting a foreign power to his kingdom and making a treaty, because in the earlier times the whole the whole political system, the economic system of the Ahom kingdom was such that the trade relations were not very flourishing. Okay, so the Ahom kingdom in most of its rule did not believe in increasing trade with the rest of India as such. Okay, so it was a very narrow and self-composed, self-sufficient economy because of the pike system, of course. So that marks the beginning of an open trade policy. That marks the beginning of the Ahom king himself inviting a foreign ruler to form a treaty. Now, what were the consequences of this commercial treaty? Well, the first consequences was that it led to the emergence of a money lending and a business class. Okay, so the people who were coming from Bengal and the rest of India and are trying to settle down here and do trade, do different kinds of trading, so they were getting increasingly rich because of the less customs duty, because of the new market that Assam has brought to the British company, because it was totally a fair market, a new market. There was a lot of people out here who needed a lot of things. So there emerged a class of businessmen who became very rich. The foreign influx started. A lot of non-Assamese people from rest of India started coming and settling in Assam at the point of time, so which led to a demographic change as well. A new class of power holders, as I said, people got rich, so a new class of power holders started emerging, and that's changed the social chemistry in Assam at that point of time. And most of all, the great man Purnananda Borgohain that I was talking about, who was also very intelligent. So what he did, he saw how the sepoys were very disciplined, they were skilled, they followed a very particular structure of command as a part of the army of Captain Welsh. So Purnananda Borgohain saw that and he was inspired, and so what he did is he formed his own standing army. Okay, so this is very relevant because during the Mughal times, during the Ahom king's time, you remember that they did not put too much importance on a standing army, because they had the pike system. The pikes not only did all the civil works, but they were also responsible for giving their lives as a part of the military. So the Ahoms did not need a military, so because they already had the pikes who were working as soldiers as well whenever there was a need. So right now Purnananda Borgohain saw that, okay fine, we couldn't even fight the Barkhandis, we couldn't fight the Moamorias because we were lacking in standing army, so why don't we start and form a standing army. So what he did is he paid a hefty bribe to one of the sepoys, the very skilled ones, kept them back, and then those sepoys tried to teach the Ahom standing army. So a standing army was formed. Okay, so these were the consequences of the commercial treaty. Okay, so now let's talk about the third part of the Moamoria Rebellion. Okay, this is very short because we have already covered the important part of the rebellion. So this will be the reign of Kamaleshwar Singha. This is the third part. Okay, and this will be from 1795 to 81, 95 to 1811. Okay, the last phase. So what exactly happened during this time? So let's see. So there were two people in Kamrup. Their names were Haradatta and Biradatta. So it's relevant because there were two brothers, Haradatta Chaudhary, okay, Chaudhary and Biradatta, and they were rebelling against the Ahom kings. So they were rebelling, and they were suppressed by Ahom Borfukan. His name was Kolia Bhumura Borfukan. Okay, they were beaten by Kolia Bhumura Borfukan. Okay, so this person, Kolia Bhumura Borfukan, he was a Borfukan at the point of time, very valiant and very courageous, and also very skilled. So he defeated both Haradatta and Biradatta, which is why the Ahom king sort of gave his name as Pratap Ballabh. Okay, Pratap Ballabh. So this can be a very interesting question for you, that who was called Pratap Ballabh? Which Borfukan was known as Pratap Ballabh? Remember, that's not Lashit Borfukan, that's actually Kolia Bhumura Borfukan. Okay, so that was the first thing that happened during the last phase of the Moamoria Rebellion. The most important part of the last phase is that there was a guy, there was a leader, a military general of the Moamorias. His name was Horbananda. Okay, Horbananda, not the prime chief minister, but Horbananda was he was from the Bangmora area. Okay, the hub of the Moamoria disciples. Okay, so Horbananda was very successful. He had defeated a lot of Ahom commanders and generals at a point of time, and of course Kamaleshwar Singha, by the time even the Ahom rulers were very bored of they were annoyed, they were exhausted of fighting the rebels for more than 40 years. So the king finally decided that, okay, enough is enough. It's time for us to properly settle down everything, and if at all we have to make some compromises, we should go ahead with it and do our own task. And if at all the Moamoras, if at all under the leadership of Sarmananda, if they want to have an autonomous territory inside the Ahom kingdom, let them have it. Okay, so this is important because Horbananda was finally installed as a Bor Khanapati of Bangmora. He's from Bangmora, and he was installed as Bor Sanapati, which means the great general. Okay, great general, and the Motok kingdom was established at that point of time. Okay, so that reconciled with the most influential of the Moamoras. So just like I said, Bangmora was like the most important place for the Moamora disciples. Okay, and Horbananda was from Bangmora. Okay, he was finally, because of his successes, he was installed as the great general, or the Bor Khanapati, and it was like a compromise between the Ahoms and the Moamoras, because by that time even the Ahom king was exhausted of fighting so many battles with the rebels. Okay, so that's all about it, and their whole Moamora Motok kingdom was established between the Brahmaputra river and the Dihing river. Okay, so that whole stretch of land was given to the Motoks and to be ruled by Horbananda as the great general, as an autonomous region. Okay, so that's all about the Moamoria Rebellion. In the next class, we will talk about the three Burmese invasions and how the people of Assam suffered through the Burmese invasions. Then we'll talk about the coming of the British. We'll talk about the imperialist maneuvers of the British. We'll talk about David Scott's reforms and all that other problems. Okay everyone, so this is the end of today's class, and in the next class we'll start off with the beginning of the Burmese invasions in Assam. Okay, thank you so much. Goodbye.